very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Matthew's Coffee Bar. It's another Wednesday when I get to chill out with my buddies and my friends, and where we get to have a conversation touching on everything and anything. I want to welcome all of you tonight. Again, I have got an amazing panel, and more will be logging in as we go on with the show. But once again, I want to appreciate, of course, those of you that have consistently been part of the show. Here is where we as a church get to sharpen one another, because for too long, it's been assumed that the church's assignment and responsibility is just to pray and then watch things happen. But we are changing that narrative because we are talking. We want to get involved in politics. We want to get involved in governance and leadership, in what happens in our country. That's why we have this conversation where we get to talk about things current, about things that have been, and how we can, as Christians, pivot and move forward and get involved in the future of this country that we love. Well, once again, welcome to Start a Watch Party. You can share. Please remember, you can comment, because I'm telling you, it's going to be exciting today, because almost like every other night, I'm getting a new guest in the show. And these are guys that are packed with information that's going to be a great, great, great blessing to you. Well, welcome to the show. I want to begin all the way again from Oxford in the UK. Yours truly, the one and only Pastor Diggs, we call him. That is Gitaga Karibu Sana. God bless you. And then, of course, from last Wednesday, we hosted one Mr. President. And this man, I'm telling you, he's got what it takes to be a president. Don't be fooled by anyone. I would give him my vote any day. Well, he's back again, ready with information and willing to help us in the conversation as we sharpen one another and as we talk as God's people. And, of course, everyone. If you're a Kenyan, this is a very relevant show for you, because we are talking, and we are talking. We just want to bring everything to the surface, because we've been leaving stuff to the politicians, but now we want to be part of what happens in this country, even as we try to direct it in the right path. Well, again in the show, this one is not only a friend, but he's a son. I was his best man. Can you imagine? And so it is so exciting. He is a media personality. I told you guys that got connections. I told you. On the show today, ladies and gentlemen, from the family media, he is a great friend and, of course, well respected in this country. Please welcome to the show one man. His name is Frederick Njiri. And, of course, like I said, I believe he has lost a share today. Karibu sana, Fred. It's great to have you on the show.
Santi.
All right, guys. Once again, let me remind you, please share. Start a watch party. Let's get rolling. I just want to welcome, of course, Fred, as always, our culture and tradition, to give us his maiden speech, of course, in Matthew's Coffee Bar, and just to tell us a bit about himself, where he is at it right now, even as we warm up towards our conversations today. And they are loaded today. There are many. Fred, please tell us a bit about yourself, where you are at right now, even as we get this show on the road.
All right. It's a great honor and opportunity to be on this coffee bar. As you can see, I got myself armed with
yes. I got my brown eyes right now.
what I can say. Yeah, my name is Fred, as Pastor Matthew has said. He definitely was my best man. What we did, we look for men and people who believe in marriage, and we found Matthew and his wife. And, they were a great help to us, and we got the right stuff from him. In terms of career-wise, I've been in the media, I think now I can say, for almost 18 years. Started with family, did a few stints at K24, then now I'm heading the TV at Family TV. And current affairs, I must say, current affairs is what I love. I love what is happening in this country, what happens in this country. And one of my joys is to play a role in influencing the way things happen in this country. So it's a great opportunity, a great platform, and I believe if there was a time that the church needed to play a bigger role in influencing the way things are done in this country, it's got to be now.
Yeah.
And so thank you very much, Matthew and team, for allowing me to be on this platform.
Awesome. You're welcome, Fred. And it's absolutely fantastic to have you here. I want to, of course, engage Guitar a little bit. He's saying, standing cold where he is, well, it's standing hot where we are. So, I mean, these temperatures. Guitar, say jumbo to the crew. And, of course, even as you tell us where you are at right now and what's going down in the UK.
Well, yes. Thank you, Matthew, Pastor Matthew. Good to reacquaint again with Fred and Jiri, and also it was a pleasant surprise to have Mr. President himself last week. I think it must be more than 10 years since we last met face to face. So that is good. So in the UK, we are now in autumn, so summer is officially over. So we are now, the temperatures are dropping. People are looking for cardigans and jackets, as you can see. So we are now going into the cold season. The sun is very much firmly now behind us, and the temperatures are dipping. In terms of what is happening, you remember most European countries at the beginning of lockdown, March, April, went into a severe lockdown where there was literally no movement. And then just a couple of weeks, months back, the government started to lift that up. But we've seen numbers rising in terms of COVID infections. And there is a bit of anxiety as to where is the best approach, because the government's initial approach has been to lock down specific places where there is a spike. But I think we are looking at a situation where there are so many spikes that locking down 50 cities is pointless. You'd rather lock the whole country again. So there's a real anxiety that we might suffer another lockdown. My view about it as a Christian, as a citizen, is that we need to continue praying, but we need to pray for the authorities, because these people, and I'll say this with the most respect of leaders, they have no clue. They've never encountered something like this, and they do not know what to do. So we need to pray for them for wisdom, because on the one side, they are trying to save people's lives by putting very severe restrictions, but also trying to save people's lives by allowing people to continue working. And it is such a tough balance, because by allowing people to continue working, you risk allowing this virus to continue infecting people. So there's no clear-cut solution, and anybody who's coming up with a clear-cut, with an easy, simplistic solution is lying and kidding to people. We need God's grace, and for us, as I take my responsibility as a church leader to tell people, please listen to what the government is advising, follow government instructions and regulations. But let's keep praying. Let's keep hoping that God will help us to overcome this pandemic.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Guitar. Kind of just catching up, and as you were just talking, one Pastor Michael Musembi, the rabbi, just popped in, and it's great to have you, Michael, in the show. Karibu sana. And I can see one gem people. I told you guys, they're going to be coming in fast and furious. And it's wonderful to have you guys here. Absolutely amazing. It's always a joy to have you here. So, Michael, karibu sana. I want to engage Alex right away, because we started a conversation around issues tribal. just that other Wednesday before we came to talk about BBI, and I think there are a couple of loose ends that we would like to maybe touch on as far as BBI is concerned, and then we're going to go into other current affairs as we move forward. Alex, the question was, and I want to pose us to you, is tribalism in this country like a perennial curse? In other words, every time seasons like this show up, every time there's an election knocking at the door, is it that we must always now begin?
Oh.
I think he's frozen.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, he's back now.
Sorry, I got disconnected for some strange reason. Anyway, go on, Alex. I'm sure you heard my question.
Fred, you see the kind of hosting we have here. It's also tough. My thinking and my opinion is that we don't have a tribal problem in Kenya at all. Because throughout the times, the Kikuyu, the Luo, the Luya, the Maasai, the Kalenjin, the Rendile, everyone work together, live together, travel in the same matatus, and do everything together. Until some selfish people who, if you remember last week, and because I'm seated with a lot of pastors, you'll excuse my language, who have no manners, come and start identifying something they call a difference between us just because we speak different tongues. Yeah. And so it is not a curse. We don't have a tribalism, but we do have some selfish people who use our differences to gain advantage over us. And let me say this, that even when you look at marketing, when you're marketing products, you always look for that unique thing about your product that you are selling. And unfortunately, the politicians in this country have found that if they can be able to call me a Kikuyu, call you a Mkamba, call the other one a Luo, a Luya, and all that, and actually keep humping on it, that there's a difference, there's a reason why we can disagree on that tribal line, then it becomes an issue. We just need to stop for a moment and be able to think as one. And I call upon the church, because unfortunately, even in church, what do? We separate ourselves depending on where we come from. And I think it's time that we became universal, so that those differences that are caused by the selfish people doesn't come to affect us. I want you to reflect on what happened on Sunday in Muranga. On both sides of the divide were people from the same community. They were all Kikuyus. So really a Kikuyu was killing a Kikuyu because of political differences. And that tells you that while over the last 50 years, this country has been ruled by people that have found the difference in us in the language we speak, I think we have reached a point where poverty is so high that people now are looking for difference between those who have and those who don't have. The so-called dynasties and hustler tribe, our caste on what do you call economic state.
Yes. Well, thank you very much. I'd like to hear Fred's. I hope you guys can hear me. Well, I'm kind of changing gadgets here because I seem to be having a challenge with the internet here. But don't worry, I got it. I hope you can hear me clear. Fred, I just would like to hear what you weigh in as far as that's concerned. And then we're going to move on again to something else. What is your take in this? Because it seems like, and I like what Alex has said, really. It's actually imagined. It's stuff that politicians just try to throw at us in certain times for their own advantage. But what's your take as far as tribalism and race? Well, is it tribalism, or what do they call it in your legal language? I'm looking for that.
Ethnicity.
Negative ethnicity.
Yes, I was looking for that word. Yes. Go on, Fred.
Now, I think one of the biggest problems that we have in this country, I agree with Mwathi, we don't really have what you can call negative ethnicity problem.
Yeah.
What we have is a problem of resources. Tell them the reason why they don't have what they need to have is because another group or another people has what they are supposed to have. You will get them to hate this other group because they will blame the other group for the problem that they have.
Yeah,
and it's very unique because this normally happens during the election period. Because from the very beginning, from the first presidency and all the way to now, the presidency has been associated with allocation of resources.
yeah,
So anytime you have a Kikuyu presidency, then you tend to have more resources, whether imaginary or whether a reality, going towards the tribe where the presidency comes from. And the second presidency, the third presidency, all these perceptions have made it look as though once you get your own to the top seat, then you get a piece of the cake. Yeah. So constantly there is a rush to go and get a piece of the cake. And so politicians have discovered that once you can get a community, a tribe, to believe that unless that one group is the one that is stopping them from accessing the piece of the cake,
yeah,
then you will have some of these things that we've been saying. And it's Kenyans, we are the ones who are allowing this to happen, because as Mwate says, we live with different communities, we work with different communities, and then during that time, nobody even bothers to know which community you come from. We just work together. But when the election comes, the politician, because they have known this is the only way they can be able to achieve the objective, because the system in Kenya, the political system in Kenya is wired to divide so that you can be able to get whatever it is that you want to get. And the best way to divide and put people into groupings is by bringing the tribal card out. And that's what has been happening. Unfortunately or fortunately, whichever way you choose to look at it, it's now moving from the tribal perspective. The narrative has now changed, and it's coming to the haves and have-nots.
Yeah.
So the same thing that happened, I think it was in 2007, after the electoral violence started. After a while in Kisumu County, people from the slums started now invading the homes of the people who have and looting. So it is a system that is set to divide and rule. In Kenya, it has been used, the tribal card has been used. Now it's going to the haves and have-nots. And ethnicity is not necessarily a bad thing, because if you look at Europe, you have the Germans, that's an ethnic group that just cut out a boundary and they're living in that area. If you look at where guitar comes from, that's England. It's for the English. There's French. So it's all it's all tribal communities coming together and doing a boundary and living within that boundary. In Kenya, fortunately or unfortunately, we have over 44 groups. We cannot be able to cut it into pieces, and that's one of the reasons probably we are having some of things, political leaders coming out and using that to divide us during the elections.
Yeah. Fred, what would be your take, Fred? And we are leaders here, especially in the church. And I'm curious to know what your take would be and your advice as far as the church is concerned in terms of really beginning to be in the forefront of stamping this out. I mean, it cannot be the same story, same narrative over and over again. What can we begin to do in the church, as church leaders, as believers, as born-again Christians? Because oftentimes we find ourselves sucked into this same lie. What can we do to just make sure that we turn the tide around and the story changes, the narrative changes, and now we can begin to move forward as a people that celebrate our differences without going one another's throat, and especially during election time?
I believe what we need to do is just speak the truth.
Yeah.
If you look at the current situation, we hardly if the presidency comes from, take for instance, if Mwathi becomes the president of Kenya, and he comes from Deliverance Church Umoja, probably Fred Njiri, who comes from Deliverance Church Umoja, will not speak out against Mwathi, in the sense that during the elections, you can almost tell what a particular group is going to say concerning a particular political group. And I'm talking about churches. Pastors come, they form groups, and when they speak, you automatically know which side they are allied to. And so we lost our voice when we started playing party politics. And now when the church comes out and speaks, not many people take us seriously. So I think the first place to go is to go where we lost it. We have to speak the truth, even if the truth is even if the truth means speaking the truth means saying things and going against the people or the person that comes from our camp. As long as it's the truth from the Word of God, then we'll start gaining credibility with the people and we'll regain our voice. And that way we'll be able to influence the way things go. But as it stands right now, we need to do a lot of work to regain that voice, because every election year, and I can almost bet when the election comes in 2020, actually right now, the church is being thrown under the bus because of the association with one side of the political divide. Whether right or wrong, we again have lost our voice, because it is alleged or it's perceived that because quite a number of churches are getting money from DP Ruto's side in terms of whether it's offering or stuff, we will not speak against him when he says something or he does something that is not right. And this is how we as a church are losing our voice. But if we speak, let me give you an example. During the last year's election, and I'll give an example of Deliverance Church Moja. The president and the deputy president came to the church, but Bishop J.B. Masinde, he gave them an opportunity to speak, but there were boundaries. They were told what to say and how long, as in just greet the people and all that. And the message that the bishop had purpose to preach is the same message he preached.
Yeah.
So most of the times you will not see them coming to DC Umoja, because they know when they come there, the platform, they will not be given the platform to say whatever it is they want to say.
Yeah.
So, and with this, there's a respect they have for the bishop, because they know they will not be allowed to just say anything. But they will go to other platforms and they will say whatever it is. Whatever happened over the weekend happened in a church.
Yeah.
And this is where we are losing our voice. Until we start speaking the truth and standing with the truth, then we will never be able to influence this country the way God wants us to influence it.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you very much, Fred. Guys, you are watching Matthew's Coffee Bar. I'm chilling out with an amazing bunch of friends and leaders, of course, in this nation. I celebrate the likes of Leon Castro, of course, that have logged in, Esther Okoko, and of course, Malala Shem. And Lois Kemboida says the system now is between the dynasties and the hustlers. Wonder for how long will politicians continue to lie to the common mwananchi? Sad. I also have Gatimu locked. Gatimu always locking it and ready. Tuned in also is Anna Kago. Well, welcome very much, Joy. Joy, I want to hear your take, and especially with what Fred is saying in relationship to what happened in this church. Seriously, I don't have the big details of what really happened, but it's a sad place to be. And I totally appreciate what you're doing. I mean, celebrate to have known you all these years, and of course the reality that you are literally right in the heart of politics, at the same time keeping your integrity and being, even as bold as anyone could be. I really love to hear what is your perspective with what Fred is saying in relationship to what happens in the church, and really where are we going, because there seems to be a certain narrative that's being literally shaped right now to lead us in a certain direction. Joy?
Thanks so much for having me first. I have a terrible cold, so today I sound like a bullfrog, but be that as it may, I'm still alive and I thank God. Now, I have a slightly different take on this thing than what I hear my seniors and my betters saying. When people say that the fact that the church has become partisan, they've lost their voice, I tend to disagree slightly, because in my opinion, church ought to be more involved, not less involved in what is going on in our country. The reason for that is simple. You can only make something out of the raw material you have. Now, if we are not involved in people's lives at all, they cannot count on us in their day of need. They cannot count on us when they're in trouble. Then the day we want something, we cannot count on them. So standing up and being counted is something that I think the body of Christ needs to learn to do. Now, let me just qualify this. There's a caliber of, a level of ministry. Now, let me talk about somebody like my father. He's very categorical that because of his consecration, he cannot be partisan, because he needs to minister to everybody who belongs to mrengo akieleweke, kisichoeleweka, cha kutangatanga, cha kutega mayai. He has to everybody. But at the same time, but there are those of us who are not as consecrated, who are somewhere tunachezea hii ligi ndogo. Now we need to learn to take a stand.
Yeah.
Remember what I said last time. I don't care which side you belong to as many sides as you want. Only qualifier is that you must never forget that you're a citizen of the kingdom. The reason for that is simple. If you carry kingdom values wherever you go, then you are salt and light. And that's what we are called to do. I find the problem with the church in Kenya now is that we're not involved enough. And even when we're involved, we are not involved correctly. So if the only time people see you being engaged actively in politics is when you're receiving money, they will always assume that your engagement is because of money. I sit on the board of the Evangelical Alliance. And one of the things that we've been trying to do with our ministers is to encourage them to reach out to their politicians and pastor them intentionally, walk with them, listen to their fears, minister to them, the same way we do with our regular churchgoers, and not for the purpose of building patronage, but of the purpose for building relationship. And I took it a step further by challenging them that if you've got sons and daughters in your ministry who you can see have a call of God upon their life to enter politics, can you actively mentor them and encourage them to join politics? The reason for that is if we don't have the right kind of people making it on the ballot to begin with, all our election processes will be choosing the best of the worst. The final thing that I wish believers would also do when they're engaging in politics is put their money where their mouth is. We have been perceived too long as being the ones with the begging bowl. And this I'm borrowing now from the campaigns for example, in the States. Now, let's not get into the Trump versus the others argument, but you must accept that every time government is in power, but every time a government is in power, they drive certain policies. And today in this world, the policies are no longer, are we going to eat or are we going to wear shoes? I think we are past that rudimentary one. We are getting into the space where now it's ideology. We are talking ideology. Are we going to allow same-sex marriages? Are we going to allow adoptions by same-sex couples? Are we going to allow children to be given puberty blockers so they can become transgender? Those are the kinds of conversations we're going to have. Once you're done with the regular civil rights stuff, you come to the nonsense civil rights stuff. And when you get in that realm, then you need to have a say in government. The only way you have a say in government is if either you have your people there in their numbers, or you put in people who have agreed to drive your agenda when they get into power. The only way you do that is through money. Now, as church, we are used to receiving, but we don't release as much. And so now, because we don't release as much, when we go out there and issue our little press conferences saying how we will mobilize our members to reject that thing, I just write those press statements, but I know, mobilize which members? Those who voted for those people who, as in, yeah, those members are just good for an amen on a Sunday morning. But if you think they are good for a political cause, they're not. So we have to also learn, it's a Babylonian system. Babylonian system means you have to buy your influence. That means you have to sponsor candidates on purpose. Choose a side to belong to and put your money where your mouth is. Look at, for example, the Wahindis, what they do. The Wahindis contribute to every campaign, every major campaign. So if they know you're running, they don't care which party or nini means. But every campaign will receive a donation. Why? Because they know one day they're going to collect on that favor. Well, I've run for office a few times. Small offices, not the big ones, these small time ones. And I'll tell you something. When somebody calls you to the office and tells you what, I like what you're doing, I like your ideas, here's 100,000 towards your campaign. When you're sitting in the chair, you remember the person who remembered you when you had no more fuel to go to your next campaign meeting and gave you 100,000. If he calls you tomorrow and tells you, my child is in really a tight spot, can you help? You will move heaven and earth to help them. So look at what happened on Sunday. In my opinion, and I like what Bishop Oginde and Bishop Mark said the other day on TV. First and foremost, as a church, we need to reject this silly notion that we are the official opposition in Kenya. We are not. We are the church. We do church. That church had incomplete building that had been there for years incomplete. They finally found somebody to help them finish it. It was logical that they accepted the help. So stop condemning church for accepting donations from questionable tactics. Because I'll tell you why. Now we've reopened bars. Do you know how much corrupt money is being bourgeoised in those pubs or being spent on slay queens? How much corrupt money is being spent buying apartments? Are we telling people to stop selling houses because they don't know where the money came from? It's just church that should stop taking money. Why? If it's dropped in the till, we take it. We spend it. Because that's how it works. That's how it works. So we need to come to a place where we stop being judged by what the world imagines the church should be, and we define ourselves. So finally, in answer to many people's questions, how you carry yourself, and that's the point I think Fred was making, how the minister carries himself is how he'll be received. You are addressed how you present yourself. If you tell politicians, take the mic and take it away, they will. If you tell them, like the Catholics have done, and most of others, those of us have done, have said, salimia watu, anything else you want to say, hapo kwa kabro, you're welcome to hold a mini, whatever, then that's how they'll accept you. So I urge men of God to also exercise discernment, because we can't give you a one-size-fits-all. You do what you do in your congregation, because there's no particular plumb line. But as the church, let us be our first defense. Even if the others say what, let's be our first defense. Maneno ingine, we sort out behind closed doors. Wacha niachie hapo.
All right, thank you very much, Joy. I want to appreciate what ABC D that is saying. I agree with you, Joy Mdivo. The church needs to be more involved in matters involving the citizenry, politics too. And I have on Willie Matete, Kennedy Baraza, Max Echo that are joining us. Karibuni sana, guys. And of course, Susan Wagakuru, Wycliffe Munyoki, all joining us as we continue in this conversation. Mr. Rabbi, you've been quiet for too long, and you've been here kind of just scratching your head. What is the Lord speaking? You know, you're hearing two serious leaders on this other end, but what exactly is coming into your mind? And especially when you look at where we are at right now, you know, I mean, it's a sad story and a sad thing to see tear gas thrown into a church and stuff up. In fact, if people die, and I mean, that's really, really, really sad. You know, what and I hear what Joy said, lots of wisdom right there. How should the leadership of the church, how should the church posture really? As far as I know, definitely we're going to have some of those bad potatoes in our midst. Those that come rain or shine, they will take a certain direction, take a certain, stand as far as tribe is concerned, and so on and so forth. But there's those of us that are so open in our hearts and we want what is good for this country. And we are saying, show us the way. Rabbi, what would be your spanner into this works?
My initial plan would be to become a missionary to Papua New Guinea. And
what's there? Is there gold in Papua New Guinea?
No, there's cholera.
Where? These things are for lesser minds than me.
Yeah.
I've thought about that consistently, and I always ask myself, where should we draw the line as the church? What principles should we follow? Now, I know we are not Israel. We are not a theocratic nation. But we are a purported democratic nation, when in essence we are a chieftain nation. So I've always wondered what we should do as a church, because then again, we are supposed to be the salt and the light. I was reading the definition of a bribe. The definition of a bribe is that it is an act of giving that is intended to influence a desired outcome. That is a bribe. Should the church be involved in bribes? Technically, that, when I give because there's a certain desired outcome I want, is that bribe? Is it advanced gratitude? Where should the church be, and what compromises?
Rabbi, let me interrupt you. When I give a shopkeeper money and tell them that I want bread, and they actually give me bread and take my money, is that a bribe?
No, that's not a bribe.
I'm just saying that definition is a little bit wonky.
Because that is demand and supply. But I want in the near future my child to go to RVA. And so I go and see the RVA principal, and I take for him a pair of shoes. Praise the Lord. I like what you're doing, and I'll also give, 200K to the school fund for their trip to Naivasha. Then the day I go and say, I have a daughter here and I need her to come to RVA. I don't know. I just feel squirmish about some of those things. I'm not saying that they're wrong. All I'm saying is that those are things we need to think through. Politics is never a clear game. It is never a clear game. And in that sense, I completely agree with Joy, because my father-in-law is an Anglican. Was once an Anglican. He's now retired, but he was what are they called? The provost, those high guys. And he wrote a proposal for an Episcopalian church in America that they were willing to finance his project in Uholo for water. They were willing to give $3 million, only that he will, sway the vote in the African Anglican Church towards LGBTQI. You see. Now, it was between Episcopal and Anglican. They would never have known. It's in closed doors. We can say he can take that money for a greater cause, and then after that, I help But those are the questions I'm asking. What should we and should we not do? And it's a tough place as a church. That I can say. It's a tough place as a church because, again, the rules of the game can be difficult.
Yeah,
Okay. Just if I take a commercial break right here, I let you look like there is information brewing in your mind, and I want to bring it down, Richie. Richie looking like he's actually looking at the sky. That's a photo he has given us. But we'll bring him on in a short to Alex. Just quickly weigh in, because you look like you're something you want to throw into this wax. And then I will introduce probably our next point of discussion.
Interesting conversation. I think there's something that in the last couple of months I've come to put in my life. Like Paul says, I'm not the best that there is. I'm a sinner. Forgiven, but still a major sinner in this world. But I think there is something that we need to keep reminding ourselves. WWJD.
Yeah.
What would Jesus do?
Mm.
And it's critical for us to ask ourselves that question continuously. Because sometimes the situation we find ourselves in has to do with the choices that we've made a few years ago. Tanzania has about, I think, 122 tribes. And for all the years that Tanzania has been independent, we only know that they are all Swahilis because they have ingrained so that they all speak Swahili. And until very recently, we never had of any tribal situation in that country. They formed a character where they thought in one voice. So on this church thing, I think the most critical thing is for us to keep asking ourselves, what would Jesus do in every circumstance? And I see him at some point being asked about paying taxes to the Romans. And what did he say? He sent someone to go to the fish and get some piece of gold, if my Bible knowledge is still good. And he said, give to Caesar what is Caesar's. He said, because it's on the other system, I'm not of that system. But because there's a demand for me to give him, I'll give it to him. And as a church, we've really lost our voice because of indulging, if you ask me, in many aspects that are more not to do with WWJD, but what would we want for ourselves? I've said this before, that our problem is selfishness, our problem is greed, our problem is everything that we do it so that to look at what we can be. And the question sometimes I ask myself is, what do I want? Do I want to be myself, or do I want to be perceived to be a particular way? And what has happened is that we have concentrated more on what people see us are, as opposed to who we really are. If you look at the book of Nehemiah, if you allow me, among pastors now I can boast of my knowledge. You remember Nehemiah chapter 1. This man was so faithful in what he did in the kingdom that when he heard about Jerusalem, and then he went before the king, he was a cupbearer, and went before the king actually noticed and asked him, what is it? Why do your face look so down? And he asked, and then he told him what he has had. And the question the king asked him was, what would you want to do? In this country, if we, the house of the Lord, decide to stay together, decide to ask ourselves continually, WWJD, people will come to us for answers.
Well, thank you very much, Alex. Joy, somebody is putting on the spot and is asking, he's just saying that what Ruto is doing by giving out money to churches and hustlers is in order. Kindly enlighten us on this.
That question is being asked with the bias already that it's out of order. So I'll not engage in that because that's not my purview. You have your bias, I have my bias. And the reason for that is simple. When you engage in this, is that right? Is that wrong? Is that right? Then you get into a different conversation and it's not moving us forward helpfully. What I said was, when people come to church, whoever comes to church, when they drop something in the till, we accept it because that's what we do. We are church. And I said, our bishops the other day said, everybody is welcome to come to church, but we are not the official opposition. So when you demand of the church to be a voice and we don't know which voice, it's different from the days of Akina Bishop Muge. The things have changed now. Are you seeing our bishops going to the streets to be beaten the way Bishop Joya was beaten? I mean, we are past that. Now the church is engaging differently. So, for example, the president has called for prayers this weekend. The Interreligious Council, the Evangelical Alliance, we're intricately involved in that. The handshake as well. There are church leaders involved in talking to both sides to get the leaders to come together. The church is doing something. We're just not engaging the way you are used to seeing it in the days of Akina Father Kaiser. So if somebody wants to participate in our activities, we welcome everybody because that's what church does. We welcome everyone. But what Ruto is doing, is it right or is it wrong? You be the judge.
I think a lot.
Well.
I was waiting for that. I was waiting for that.
Come on.
I mean, listening to us, first of all, let's first of all put down our lines. First of all, Joy and I come from very far. We know each other from very, very far. There are some secrets that she knows about me, and there's some secrets I know about her that they shall forever remain secrets. So, so we come from each other. So listening to our conversation, there are three things that I think we're trying to find out. How do we become involved in the political space as a church? And it seems as if we're talking of three things. For one, we're talking of what Joy is saying. We have to be party political. We have to join parties and we have to use our voice there. The second one, I think I heard, is a bit of what Njiri and what Pastor Michael was saying in terms of being pressure groups, lobbying, and he's raised a good example of how do you do that? How do you lobby when sometimes lobbying actually is bribing some of these politicians to come up with policies that will favor the sector you're representing. I mean, here in the UK, the biggest job people do is lobbying politicians. You take them out, you feed them, you give them consultancy jobs, and they get money left, right, center, so that they can be sympathetic to your to the purposes and the print and the plans that you want. Is it good or bad? Question. How should the church lobby? That is another question. And then the final one is prophetic. So, and the prophetic, we all know, is about asking God to intervene, is about shedding light from a biblical perspective. I must say that's the one I'm most comfortable in. I need to learn how to do the other two. But now, coming to being prophetic, there are a number of things that I just become interesting. So, first of all, I think the country is being swayed into a wrong euphoria. This aspect about dynasty versus hustler is a complete and absolute myth. First of all, if I start with the hustler, if now I was giving advice to the people who are using the hustler narrative, that word in itself is a bad word. I wish they can look for another word. The term hustler it comes from the movement in America. Well, you don't call it a movement. It's from the rap music, that gangster culture in America, where the hustler were the foot soldiers for the drug lords, standing by the corners of the street, collecting money, doing that. So it doesn't have a very good connotation. And even if people are trying to redeem that word, I think it would probably be more problematic for them. So for me, if I was them, I would drop that. Not that I agree with what they're doing, but that's another story. I don't want to enter into that. So to me, it's a wrong analogy. But for the second reason it's a wrong analogy is because even those people who are claiming that they're using the hustler narrative, they benefited from dynasty. So it is, to me, it is a false way of trying to tell people we have never benefited from the previous political regimes in Kenya. I mean, that's not true. And people need to be aware of that. Coming back now to what I felt, I didn't want to speak too much, but I just wanted to mention this one. In terms of two things, in terms of lobbying, we must differentiate between, because politics is about compromising. But we must differentiate. I think the challenge for Christians is this. Do we compromise ideas or do we compromise values? And our problem is when we are challenged to compromise values, that's where we struggle. That's where the issue with lobbying, putting pressure on politicians, that's where lobbying will be a particular problem for churches, because it would mean a politician. So for instance, Barack Obama was pressurized into accepting gay marriages in exchange for people voting for some of the other things that he wanted. Now, for us, we would roll up in arms and say, oh, no, Christians were not supposed to do that. But if you ask him, he would say, I was compromising between ideas. But for us, we are looking at it saying, no, that is a compromise on values. So we would struggle. So that leads me to the final thing I wanted to say about accepting donations. The problem I have with some of the language, not just in Kenya, but also in the States, is this. I have a problem with the evangelical movement, and not just in Kenya, but even in the UK and the US, why we treat some sins bigger than others. We need to think very carefully the implication we're giving when we are accepting donations from whatever kind of people. So in short, I would struggle. I would disagree with Joy's position. If I would struggle to accept donations like that, I would probably, this is what I would do. And I saw this happening from the late Bunny Coombs. I don't know whether any of you can remember Bunny Coombs. Yeah. Bunny Coombs, and I was in that meeting, so this is not secondhand information. That a wealthy owner of a company came to him and offered a big check to the organization. And he went out of the meeting and he said, because he came back and reported what he did. And he went and asked that person just one question. And this is the question he asked this guy, a wealthy person who has brought a big check to church. And he asked this person, do you want me to announce that we have received this donation from you, yes or no? And the person said, it will depend on you. Barney then explained to him very clearly, I will accept this money on condition of anonymity. That I will not say who has given us this money. So for me, I would now use that line to these politicians coming to churches. I'll say, thank you very much if you want to support me, because I have in mind the questions that are arising as to how these people have accrued this money. And I would lay it to them that, thank you if you want to help us, but it will be, for me, if it was me, I would hold that line, because I am not prepared to compromise on my values. I'm prepared to compromise on ideas, but I will not be prepared to compromise on my values. And I would say, I would gladly accept your money on condition of anonymity. I do not say what you have brought, who has brought this money.
You know, the Bible says the wealth of the wicked is laid out for the just.
And they can lay it up for us without us saying who they are.
and also, if I may add in, that is an eschatological verse.
What was that again?
Fantastic, Michael. Say it again.
I said that is also the wealth of the wicked is laid up for the righteous is an eschatological verse. In other words, it has a different age, a different age interpretation.
Yes. Level of consecration to now on up. Not a club over here.
Well, what Eric Musembi says, and I want to bring Richard on this one. This actually, I think a pastor can answer. One Eric Musembi says, when does money become dirty at the pulpit? At what level is money supposed to be labeled not acceptable? Do we investigate the rest of the church monies? Richie, wake up and tell us what you're thinking. What thinkest thou?
Just give me a moment. I've just reached the house and my son is being...
Okay, Richie. I'll give you a moment. Okay, well, Fred, you can actually chime in if you have any contribution to that, because that's a question coming across here. And by the way, and Joy, Lois Gamboy said, Joy has put me on the spot on this one. Oh, I give up and become my own judge, just responding to what you said earlier. Fred, when does it become dirty?
I think money in itself is not dirty. Because if you look, we don't know. Take for instance, every Sunday morning, how sure are we that the money we receive in the morning does not come from a prostitute who has spent the whole night doing her trade, and the money she has brought is, so money takes on the character of the person who brings it, as in, and the way it's used. In itself, money in itself has no character. It takes on the character of the person who's using it. Take for instance, how do we know where the money that Christ sent Peter to go and get a fish and get a coin out of its mouth? We don't know where the money, the original owner of that coin, who the person was. But the moment, yes, it's not the fish that was using it. I believe when money comes into your hand, how you use it, you give that money character. Money, when money leaves the central bank and comes and goes to a corrupt person, it becomes corrupt because of the character of the person who's using it. The same money that has come from a corrupt person will come to a righteous person, and the money will automatically take on the character of the person who's using it. Because I believe money and who people are, but money in itself has no character. It just brings out the character of the person who has possession of it. So would I take money from some of these politicians? Yes, I would. The question is, what will I use it for? Because I think one of the biggest problem is we have lost our identity as a church. We don't know who we are. And so when we get into muddy water, we behave like a pig. But if we knew who we are, irrespective of whichever area or sphere we find ourselves, we will still maintain our identity and our character, and will be known as thus and treated the same way. You see, I think it's Psalms 82 that says, they know not, neither do they understand, and so they walk on in darkness. And then the next verse, it says, I have said ye are gods, but all ye children of the Most High, but you shall die like mere men. What didn't they know? They didn't know what God had said, that they are gods. And so they walked on in darkness, not behaving the way God expected them to behave. And they would die like mere men. So as long as we don't know who we are, we will take on the character of wherever or whichever situation we find ourselves. But once we know who we are, wherever you go, people will know. You will remain the salt, you will remain the light. And salt and light will always influence. They will always influence. So if you have some dirty money, bring it. I'll show you how to use it.
If you may just allow me 1 second, just 1 second. You know, Paul talks about exposing the works of darkness, and he talks about perception. That even the Christian is to stay away from perception, because perception paints reality. In the Old Testament, you could not take the prostitute's tithe. That was true. You couldn't take the prostitute's tithe. So when the prostitute brings money to church, yes, we don't know that she is. But if we know she's a prostitute and she tells us that she's a prostitute, then we are not to accept that money. You see, sure. we are working on the abstract that we don't know these politicians. You see what I'm saying? Yet we know them. You know, if a man brings 10 million Kenya shillings to a church, someone who's worked hard for 10 million shillings won't just bring it and throw it in there. They know the value of that money. So perception is what I'm looking at, because that perception. A man was being accused by this lady all that time. Oh, you live such a shady life. You're always doing nasty things and all that and all that. The man kept quiet. Then one day, at night, he went and parked his car next to the woman's house na akaishia. Mama alipotoka asubuhi akaona gari ya mzee hapo, the perception was he was coming from her house. You see? And that is the perception we are talking about. The brother is in a sister's house, wamekesha mpaka 2 a.m. in the morning. It's true he was praying, but the perception that that pastor was in a sister's house until 2 a.m. in the morning is what lends us to tell that man of God, please, kwangu unaomba in the morning na dada in a public place pali unaonekana. That perception is very important. What the politicians bring and the perception it shows, the Bible asks us to stay away from those things because the perception paints reality.
Okay, great. One PCD obviously it's been here before. Says I agree with Fred and Judy. Money takes a character of the giver and of the receiver. There's a hashtag there word. Helen Sarah says church is made for all kind of people. I concur with Pastor. There are politicians who are givers and kingdom financiers. If they come with money in the church, who are you to judge? Maybe it's a prayer answered. The one Fanuel Omondi says on YouTube, being that money takes the character of the bearer, so we shouldn't question the source of money because it would automatically take the character of the recipient. Someone is asking you a question. You know, we being that money takes, so we shouldn't question the source of money because it's automatically. In other words, ikuje. And Fred said, bring it on, man. We will show you what we can do with money.
You see, if you know very well that somebody has stolen money from the bank and has brought it from the church to the church, that's something else. Right now, because this conversation is being shaped by a narrative that is being given of a particular politician. It's a narrative that has been given for a very long time to a body who has come out with evidence to say that this person has stolen this money. You dig? It's just a perception. He is corrupt, he is this, he is this, he is that. If there's proof that this guy has stolen money from the bank and he's bringing it to the church, like Robin Hood, then now you obviously, because he has stolen the money and you know he has stolen the money, no. But if he is bringing the money, now who is to say this guy that everybody is saying is corrupt has a huge farm that he does chicken and sells to, I believe, the KDF in terms of eggs and stuff. Nobody knows whether that money is coming from there or not. So, if he brings money, take it.
And use it for the kingdom.
No, you guys are falling into the trap that I was sidestepping earlier. When you start discussing personalities, you lose the plot. If, for example, the president is the one who had graced the function on Sunday, would we be having this conversation? But we've gotten sucked into the vortex, and that's what I was trying to sidestep earlier. When you get sucked in the vortex, you lose the plot of the entire conversation. Now, the issue that we have with our current scenario is that we are allowing people of the world to give us a standard by which we, people of faith, should abide by. Now, I talked earlier about what Father does when politicians come to church. That's the standard he has set because that's where he feels comfortable with engaging in this. And others are not the same. You have taken time to invite a chief guest into your fundraiser. You're willing to receive whatever the chief guest is bringing. Who are we to tell you that what you are doing is not kosher? Who makes it kosher? Who makes it not kosher? And there's a reason why I'm trying to redirect this argument to, can we be the judges of our standards? So like Gitao said, this is my value system and this I will not compromise on. I can respect that. because it is something that he has thought about, it is considered, it is measured, and he knows where his lines are drawn. That much I can respect. But for Gitao to look at the guy who's pastoring the church next door and start saying, you know what, because I don't accept this, then you shouldn't either, that takes us into a different slant. I'm very hesitant when people of faith become the ones wielding the big stick to try and police other people of faith. Why? Because we have a common enemy, and it is not amongst ourselves, it's from outside. And one of the ways that he sows discord among us is by making us feel that maybe I'm a little bit more enlightened than my brother. And so because I'm of this consecration and I'm of this persuasion, then what my brother and my sister is doing is somehow wrong. We built our sanctuary without any harambe. We can easily say we don't take money from politicians. That AICPCA church have been struggling to finish the sanctuary. They called for help and they got it. Why are we having a discussion about it?
We are having a discussion about it, Joy.
The point I'm trying to make is this. Jesus gave us he made it very easy. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul. Love your neighbor as yourself. That's it. Once you have the whole law of love, then everything we do as believers, we have to put on the lens of love, especially when we are dealing with people of the household of faith. And I'll tell you why. We have enough people throwing stones at us for us to start throwing stones at each other. So is there money that is right or money that is wrong? We are dealing with the same God whose people made a deal with Rahab the harlot. She was an outcast for all it was worth. But he made a pact with her. She made a pact with his people and he honored. It's one of those things where it is so subjective to the situation that for us to sit and think that we can come up with a straight line across this conversation, I think we'll walk into error. So we need to keep this discussion on places where we have sure footing. Because at the end of the day, like Fred said, when I look around all the politicians right now, there's only one who's actually consistently stood with the church, as in, and he's been open about standing with the church. It's Ruto. So when you look at church people, when they think about we need to call somebody to come to us, it's like a default position. So this conversation is not one that is ending with AICPCA. I promise you, he will go to another church and to another one and to another one. And we as men of God, will we be the ones to tell our brothers, you know what, you're building a church with Ruto money, wait for it to collapse, wait for those stones to fall off the walls. Can we do that really? So that's what I'm saying. We need to elevate this conversation to beyond personalities. That's my take.
Just very briefly, Pastor Matthew, because my dear sister Joy has mentioned me, so but she has not mentioned me adversely, so I'm not reacting to anything. So all I am saying, in my remarks that I did not say that I'm questioning people's source of income, and I was not alluding to just this one particular incident. For me, the issue is not the source of the money. To me, and tying to what Fred Njiri has said, to me is an awareness. As for me, is an awareness that money is influence. So this person bringing this significant amount of money, I need to be satisfied within myself. What am I selling in exchange for this money that I am receiving? What am I giving away in exchange for this money that I'm receiving? I understand Michael Musembi's argument about perception. That is also another factor. And I can understand what Joy is saying in terms of perception. We have no evidence to say this money has come from a particular source. That being the case, my issue is not about the source of money, but an awareness that money is influence. So if you're prepared to give me a significant amount of money and not be prepared to accept that I will accept it on condition of anonymity, my understanding of that means you're giving me that money for publicity. And therefore, I am not prepared to accept it for publicity, because even the prostitute who brings money on Sunday does not insist that I publicize what she has given or he has given. So in the same manner, if you're prepared out of your own conscience, I have no way of knowing where you have gotten the money, but you are happy for me to accept your money on the condition of anonymity. In other words, that is guaranteeing me as a pastor that you are not going to influence me by the money you're giving me. Then I will accept it. That's all I wanted to clarify, my dear Joy. That's all I wanted to clarify.
No, that was understood. My point was when you have organized a harambe and you have invited somebody as a guest of honor, and you have publicized that Fulani is my guest of honor. Now, in those instances, again, are you going to tell him you come under the cover of darkness? It's you who told people Fulani is coming to my church on Sunday for a harambe. So in that situation, you are the one who blew your own cover. But I agree with you. The right hand should not know what the left hand does. And in terms of giving, that is actually how giving should be done. So actually, on that one, we're on the same page. Like it is
Yeah, I'm glad you brought me. Let me bring in Richard. He's a pastor here. Yeah, we are talking about money, and some of this tangent that we seem to have taken, and it's okay because again, it's something that we have seen is something that's happening all over the place, and it's good to be able, because at the end of the day, I've got actually questions flying for hope left and right and center. People are asking, like clearly money is a sensitive topic, and where is the problem for the church to receive an offering? Because some give, others don't, so on and so forth. Richie, you're talking about money, and you are hearing the ensuing here. What is your spanner into these works?
I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
I don't even know where to start. I'll just say one small thing. We have all these issues because, and I don't want to blame anyone. I think we are at a place where the church must go back to a certain fundamental that Jesus teaches us in Revelation chapter 2 and chapter 3. And that fundamental is a very clear fundamental. It says in for all the churches that he talks to, and those churches represent both time dispensations and both the church in its various conditions. For each of them, he had one common statement. He tells them different things, but then there's one statement he repeats over and over again. And that's a statement that will really help us. Probably if you're a person you're listening to us, that statement simply says, let him who has a ear hear what the Spirit is saying to the churches. What is the Spirit? If the Spirit told this pastor to do a fundraising and call a certain politician, I don't have any problem. If the Spirit did not tell that pastor to do so, then that person will be judged by God. I'm not the one to judge. The Spirit told Hosea to marry, which Hosea, whoever it is, to marry a prostitute. I would have judged Hosea. I would have, castigated him and said, you cannot be a prophet if you're marrying a prostitute. But the Spirit told him to do so. The Spirit told Isaiah to walk naked. Is it Isaiah or who is it? So if you find Reverend Chogo walking, in his underwear, around the market in Umoja.
No, naked, not in his underwear, walking naked.
No, I'm just trying to be decent. You could judge me, but at the end of the day, I've done what the Spirit asked me to do. And so the Spirit will ask different churches to do interesting things. And who are we to judge? And so maybe the place for us to go to as church leaders, and I will talk to church leaders, is just be sure that, the conviction with regards to handling money, receiving or giving is, absolutely in line with what the Spirit has instructed you. Because in the church where I'm part of, and some of you have mentioned the position there, and that's what the conviction we feel the Spirit has given us is we need to it needs to be given in anonymity. And then we are not going to do fundraisers they're going to challenge people to give offerings and to give sacrificially. And it doesn't work because of the conviction of the Spirit for us. And so I wouldn't want now to say, okay, this must be the standard for everyone else. But again, I think I would agree a little bit with Gitau's, assertion that if whoever is coming to give is insisting that it must be made public, with the exception of the case of the fundraiser, because fundraiser are public things and amounts are mentioned publicly. But if it's a church space and they're insisting on that, then I would have question marks because I don't want to feel like I owe anyone anything after they have given me as a church leader money. And we need to understand that church is a place, it's one of the easiest places you can get, votes. You can sway people easily in the church. It's an easy space to get a crowd to address and do these things. So if I discover that I can easily use money to buy that space. Let me talk about a little bit about
okay, you're frozen, Richie. This video is frozen right there. Okay, as we get Richie back, one Helen started saying, calling a politician for funds drive in the church is a compromise. But if he visits and gives money, take it. That's one of the people that are watching us saying, look, they bring it quietly, they are not going to shout about it and take it. But then there was all this conversation about, Rich, are you back? We lost your video.
Okay, I don't know if you can still hear me. I think my internet also is having issues. But I'm saying if at some point it will feel like we owe them, even the book of James warns us about it. It says if you will treat other people differently because of what they offer, because they are wealthy, that's the assumption, then that is unacceptable. If I will give preference to a certain politician because they have given me money, then that becomes a challenge. And I think we need to be careful when we're dealing with that. There has to be a bit of caution. But people bringing money to the church, they can bring money. And, and the money that comes on Sunday morning, some of it has come from some interesting spaces. And who are we to judge? But if there is, insistence on it must be announced, it must be, and then it's like we owe, then that can be a problem. And if it's being used as a platform to sway voters in a particular direction, then, and maybe politicians' motives should be questioned at some point because it could be pandering, and pandering now becomes something else. So my basic thoughts, yeah.
Okay. Well, guys, there it is. Talk about money, talk about what has happened, and of course, what the sort of discussion and of course conversation that are solicited. Of course, it really just brings to the surface a conversation around what can we receive as church leaders, what can we receive in the house of God, and what can't we receive. I seem to hear that, look, if you are going to, and Joy, I think is really adamant in saying, look, if you are going to, if someone is going to do a fundraiser, invite a politician, they come. I mean, seriously, let them be. They're the ones who invited the politician. What do you expect? A politician will bring money. Or someone shows up in church, and like Gita was saying earlier on, gives me a fact check, like in the story and the illustration that he used. And I asked, look, do you want me to announce this? Because if you do, then I'm not going to. But if, you don't want me to, I'll just put it in the church kitty, and we are done. And I think that's acceptable because that's the same place we find ourselves in, because people give from all kinds of sources, guys. That's a reality. When someone puts money in the offering bag, you have no idea where they pick. In fact, they could have actually just killed someone there, stolen money, and brought a tithe. Because there are people who do that. They believe God helped them to steal. Before I let you guys go, I want to hear what your take is, and I'll go to the politician, Mr. President. Schools confusion all around, opening, reopening, parents making noise left, right, and center. What is your take?
We are in a very interesting space where those that are meant to be guiding and leading in the whole planning and scheduling, also they are in the dark. In terms of, you had Gitao saying that they have had a situation where the whole thing have been contained, and now he's speaking up. Forget about that Magufuli said there's no COVID in Tanzania, and because he says there's no COVID, then there's no COVID in Tanzania. Okay? So it might pick up again. But my position have always been that...
okay, what are you saying, Alex? There's no COVID in Tanzania because Magufuli said?
Yes, there's no COVID. It's fact. It's a fact. A fact.
Go on.
So now, my position have always been that...
Mr. President, is it a fact that the president said there's no COVID? Or there's a fact that there's no COVID in Tanzania?
The fact is that there's no COVID in Tanzania.
Because the president has said it.
It's because he said there's no COVID, that there's no COVID.
Okay.
Now
we understand where you're coming from in that one.
My position has always been that we are using a sledgehammer to hit a mosquito. And if you look at the number of deaths that have happened over the last 7 months, the number of infections vis-a-vis the number of tests that have happened in this country, we should have opened this country a long time ago. School should have opened at the beginning of this term. There's no reason whatsoever. Between you and me, Gitaus and the other people who are out in the diaspora have an opportunity to be able to do something called social distancing. You know, it's a new term in English. And but when you come to this country, the majority of people cannot afford that social distancing. You go to the most parts of this city. The children are not in school, but the children are outside playing with each other throughout the day, throughout the night. Their parents go out to the office and come back home. So if they picked up the damn thing in the office, they'll infect their children at home. And I'm saying there's a huge confusion, but I think it's because we don't want to take the bold step and say, open up school and then the kids go back to school. If you ask me, should have been done a month or 2 months ago, not now. And I see now I hear there is someone who has gone to court to be able to challenge that, and it seems the court have stopped it. And I think it's just being activist in this circumstance. I think we need to open up this economy so that, because we could die of hunger more than the COVID that we're trying to prevent ourselves from. That's the position. Open up schools now.
Okay. Now, Gitao is in the UK, and of course, earlier on you mentioned the reality of what they are experiencing. There's a spike in the so-called infections, so on and so forth. And I just brought this, guys, here because we're parents in our churches. We have schools, you know, and sometimes you're lost in this back and forth between politicians, teachers. I also saw in an interview I think that was the other night, and all sorts of things. And it would really help that we threw in and shed some light in this. And I appreciate what you brought in, Mr. President, right there in terms of when actually we should probably just have taken a bold step and opened the nation, so to say. But Gitao, looking at your situation where you are at, would you bear a similar opinion?
So it's very difficult for me to comment about the Kenyan education situation because...
but in terms of opening the nation, totally, economy and stuff, vis-a-vis like what you've seen in your place where they try to open and then suddenly there's spikes in infections. You know, I think that's something that we can relate with.
I think the thing that has surprised everybody is the low rate of infections in Africa, possibly with the exception of South Africa, and I think some of the Northern African countries. Majority of Sub-Saharan Africa has not had very numerous infections at all. Now, I'm not sure, you people on the ground might enlighten me, and I'm not sure whether that is as a result of the measures that the government took such that the infection, the pandemic did not spread, or whether it was because there was just no high rates of.
Well, it's because we prayed, Gitao. Come on.
Well, and thank God for that. I appreciate that. But we were also praying here in Europe, and we, for instance, in the UK, we lost 40,000 people within a short space of time. So, by all means, also in your prayers, then mention Britain as well. So we would gladly take that. And there's a real anxiety here, and some of it is pastoring people so that to help people not to be anxious, not to be crippled by fear, but also to obey what the government is saying. So for me, there's a real anxiety here that education sector was opened because of the spike. Whether that will translate to a spike in Kenya is very difficult to say for me as an outsider, because, for instance, if we take Tanzania, maybe you don't want to drift into Tanzania. It's very difficult to, I think they've taken the angle that the economy has to go on. Whoever dies will die. We have to continue living. Now, the problem with that position is what you see in Brazil, because the numbers just went astronomical. So, by God's grace, it hasn't happened in Tanzania or in Kenya. And I pray that it remains that way. Actually, your prayers are that it remains that way and life continues.
Yeah.
You know, the question I'd like to ask Gitao is this. The supposition is that the new spike has happened because schools are opened. The question is a new infection on the children who are school going?
So here the infection is mainly young people, especially universities, not so much the primary school or secondary school, it's the university students that it has really taken us. So for example, where my daughter is in university, the rate before they went back was about less than 20 people per 100,000. As at yesterday, it had shot up to about, I think, 700 per 100,000. So and they can only identify the reason why it has spiked is because universities attributed to universities going back. And some of the students, not all, some of the students are being very reckless, being very irresponsible, not adhering to social distancing, having parties in small spaces, and the infections are literally going through the roof. As we are talking, they have a real danger that they will be forced to be locked down in their university town, so she wouldn't be able to come for Christmas. That is now what the government is really thinking about, that we have to lock them where they are, so you don't go back home. You stay there until the thing comes down. So I think as a church, we just have to keep praying. I think we still have to encourage people to follow the government guidelines. It's a shame that maybe in Kenya, COVID millionaires has sort of destroyed trust and confidence in how people are approaching what the government is saying, which is regrettable. But I follow what Dave Richards put out a nice message on Facebook 1 or 2 weeks back, and he was telling people just follow what the government is saying. He told Christians, stop this conspiracy, looking for conspiracies behind COVID. Just follow what the government is saying. Let's keep praying. Let's be the salt and light. But it's a difficult one. It's a difficult one, Mwazi.
Yeah. Okay, Alex, someone is asking you care about the economy than the health of the future generation?
The reality of the matter is this: whether it's because of our prayers, whether it's because we are Africans, there are people who are coming with theories that we got the BCG, and BCG seems to be working to give us immunity against this thing. Whatever the case may be, God has preserved us. God has protected us. We have very low, what you call testing. I think the last one I had, they had tested 569 people in a full day. But Then the good news is only 22 are positive, which means that you have dropped from when we had a peak in July, August, where we had an 8% infection rate on the numbers that are tested, to a drop of almost 3 or 2%, which means even though there is less testing, the percentage of people that are infected are much lower. Now, so God has preserved us, and that's why I'm saying, if we have had 574 deaths in Brazil, in March, they had, I think, 2,000 deaths. In April, it jumped to 10,000 deaths. And you know it's been going up. Brazil now is, I think, is the third largest, and India have just overtaken them as the second country with the highest infection and highest deaths. So God has preserved us. And for that reason, if God has preserved us, let's take advantage of his grace and go on with life. That's all I'm saying.
I get it, and I probably totally agree with you in the sense that I don't think you can use a Brazilian model, or if it's well, story or case, and then make our decisions based on that, because again, we have our own experience here in terms of the rate of infection. Like you're saying, clearly, if you even walk down the streets of Nairobi right now, I mean, the guys are no longer even putting masks around their necks; they're carrying them in their hands. I saw that and I said, man, the story is changing now. It's not around the neck now; it's actually carrying it just to make sure that as soon as a policeman shows up, they can throw it into the face. So on and so forth. And so I understand that actually we need to look at our scenario and situation and actually make our decision based on what is our situation here, because I don't know, I'm not a scientist. Maybe the strain here is a weak one. You can't beat the African immunity or whatever the case may be. I don't know. Guys, I'm winding this down, and I thought I needed to throw this question here because it's happening right now. There's, like I said, a back and forth. Should we open schools? Should we not? In fact, I just heard a story, Fred, actually, from your radio as I was coming. I told you I listen to your radio every time I'm driving down here. And Sarah was actually saying, look, there's a parent that received a letter from the school that the kid has been dismissed because they had not been paying for online learning, and so they have now to either reapply for admission, sort of things, all kinds of things going on in this scenario. Anyways, whatever it is, I just want to hear your take on this as we wind down. And Fred, I come to you. I want to know what you think. Do you agree with Alex that we should just open, let the kids go back? Let them study. Let's open the nation. I mean, let's move on with our lives.
I guess there is it's a tight rope to walk because I look at it from this perspective. Let's learn from what the other countries have experienced. Let's get lessons from them, and then also let's look at our own experience. And then from the two, let's come up with a conclusion, a decision. And I support what the government has done. Do partial, open up partially, see how it's going to play out. And then after that, just increase the numbers as you try and control the interaction between the people. Because the last thing, again, you want to have is open up the whole school and let all the kids back in. And then before long, you have a situation like Gitao is talking about in some of the universities. Because again, it is the responsibility of the government to protect its people. If they have information that there's a possibility this might happen, then I support the decision that has been taken. Do partial opening, then study what happens, and then continue, bringing in more students. We don't know the number of people who are dying in Tanzania. Because one of the things that the government did is that they outlawed and they actually made it criminal for any person to report that there is COVID or somebody has died of COVID in that country, including if you put it on any WhatsApp or any social media platform, then you will be arrested and you will be reported. So as far as TZ is concerned, we don't know. And there's a possibility quite a number of people have died because of the same. So I wouldn't propose that we go the TZ way. I would rather we be cautious a little bit, just see how things are going, and then let's move on. If the numbers don't spike, let's completely open up the country.
Okay, thank you very much, Fred. I want to appreciate Lily Walegwa all the way from the US, and is saying, please mention USA as well in your prayers. That's Lilian Mukamburi asking us to pray for her. Lois Sambo say, I agree with Alex. It's all about God's divine exemption in Africa. He has truly preserved us. Joy, you've got school-going kids. If school was to open according to the program of the government, are you taking your kids to school?
I wish they would open it completely, because I feel the way they're trying to limit the numbers and to put regulations for when they go to dining hall and such like will kill the joy of going back to school for the children. And in my opinion, it might take away from the going back to school experience in a level that children might actually dislike learning altogether. So I would rather we reopen completely. And today I was watching Sky News. And in Britain, there's actually a study, I think, that was released today, where they are saying despite the spike, they would rather people take care of the elderly and the immunocompromised in the homes more carefully, but open up for the rest of their society, because they realized locking everybody up is actually counterproductive. At the end of the day, yes, you don't catch COVID, but you catch, lack of a better word, all manner of other things. So I was listening to the Scottish Prime Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, and she said, look, we appreciate that there is a virus and it is ravaging people, but we also realize that the harsh measures we took before had other unintended consequences. And so now the personal responsibility comes to the family to take care of its vulnerable and its elderly, because those are the ones we've seen are most adversely affected by the virus, and open up for the rest of the community. What that means is this. It means reopening the economy as it was pre-COVID, such that people can mingle freely and do what? With the hope, and perish the thought, because Sweden was the one that did this in Europe and Tanzania here, that people develop herd immunity. And in the study, they actually said, you know what? It doesn't mean you cannot get reinfected, but what will happen is that the infection becomes less severe and less severe until eventually you develop full immunity. Now, those of us who live here know that's how it works with something, for example, like malaria. The first time you get it, you think you're going to die. After getting it 3-4 times, you get to a place where your body knows the routine and it sort of fights it out. All I'm trying to say is this. When we started in March, we had the benefit of seeing what others had gone through and borrowing their experience to determine what we do here. But now we have, between March and here, we have our own experience. We have our own numbers. We have our own statistics. We have our own information. I would that our government would make decisions based on that. So, for example, the number of children we've lost to this pandemic is, I think, less than 10. And all the children we've lost had a previous serious underlying illness. That tells me if we release children to school, there's no imminent danger to the children. And in answer to your question, yes, I'd be glad to let them go. But if I'm going to let them go to school, they have to wear a mask the whole time. That means they're breathing compromised air the whole day. By evening, I may be dealing with people with something congesting in their chests or their noses, or like with me, I suffer migraines if I don't get, if my oxygen saturation goes down. So I can imagine if my kids put on the mask all day long, by evening, one of them who's migraine prone, like their mother, they'll be migraine prone. I'm not willing to do that. If they're going to go to school and they're told you can only go to the playground 3 kids at a time and you have to stay away from, that's the bit I'm not willing to do, because I don't want them to go back to school and have a messed up experience of school. Because at the end of the day, I'll have kids who next year, when we tell them, okay, now go back, they've already hated it, they don't like it, it's not worth it anymore. So I wish we would have a more nuanced response to this pandemic. And I agree with Alex, we should have reopened a long time ago. We took too long, and now when we are reopening, you're making it such short order that people are not organized. So that even if they're happy to send their kids back to school, the money, the things are just not in place. And that's why you find some of those schools that were saying, oh, even online, we were carrying on with learning. So if your child wasn't online, then find another school. Me, if I'm that parent, actually find another school. That's such a malenge school. What reasoning is that? But be that as it may, in this particular scenario, tufungue, let's reopen the economy. The science is over, the fun is over, the money is over. Let's just go ahead and bite the bullet.
I totally hear you. One Canada George says the government just needs to be truthful about the pandemic. It goes on to say, my desire would have been to open completely. Children are really losing a lot. I think the government really took harsh measures on schools, stroke universities, and colleges. One ABCD says, I agree with Fred Njiri. Let's exercise caution. We don't abuse grace just because it's abundant. Yes, I would that schools should reopen, even to help with herd immunity. Herd immunity is a health concept, but can we appreciate the public health parameters, please? Yes, we do. Well, I think one of the things that I've kept on hearing is about the so-called being asymptomatic as Kenyans. I think the last I heard was that 93%, or did I hear my own thing? But at least I know this one time it was 80%, and it keeps on growing. My point being that the reality is out of 100,000 Kenyans, then the ones that are probably, possible or likely to go down with COVID-19 are about 20,000. I mean, if I go by that simple math, whatever, 80% should be fine. Wouldn't it have been sense, therefore, to just take care of those sort of underlying issues, take care of the elderly, allow kids back to school, let them be kids? Joe, you say only 10 have actually succumbed to this, and it is because of underlying issues, so on and so forth. I mean, instead of just being here, you're reopening the country. You say bars go up to 11 o'clock, really? I mean, these guys are drinking themselves to the morning, we know. Si wanajifungia ndani, wanakesha wakikunywa.
Ni kweli. Kafi na bora uko nje. Ukiwa ndani uko sawa.
As long as you say there, you can go on. Hata makesha saa hii tunafanya mpaka asubuhi, maana tuko kanisani. I mean, at the end of the day, really, it isn't much that the country really is achieving. They started opening the churches, of course, to allow 100 people. And then I think after a month, they were okay, fine. Now, as long as you can fit in this number, having observed protocols, and go ahead. Now it is, you can do 2 hours, and actually even the distance has been reduced, in the church. I think all along probably they thought these churches, here is where we're going to get trouble, and they didn't find the trouble. I mean, they just allowed us to just move on and do our thing, pray for them, let this country move on, and live our lives. Anyway, guys, I'm bringing it down. I just want to hear Richard's input as we wrap it for the night, Richie. Schools open or don't open?
They should have opened long time ago.
Amen. This is a man of God.
Honestly, these kids are like the estate I live in. These kids are mingling like crazy out here. Yeah. And if they were to kill our entire estate, would have died, all of us, by now. If they were to kill each other with infections, would have died by now. I mean, these kids are just, you walk outside, during the day, they are playing, they are all over the place. I drove down the other day to Lakisama Estate, and kids are all over the place. Actually, there are football tournaments going on the whole day, in those places. And these kids are mingling. And, there's the whole science thing, and I appreciate the whole thing of being cautious. But these measures that have been put in place by the government, you and I know that they're just being followed in certain spaces. But otherwise, most of Kenyans are mingling, and this thing is being passed on. And 90% earlier in the middle of the year, they said 90% of us are asymptomatic, and we don't end up having this grave symptoms, and most of the population is young. I think science would have, that's the problem of not having good data and taking into account that data. And if you are to follow science then this country should have actually been opened up long time ago. It had to follow science in terms of rate of infections, in terms of rate of people dying. We would have opened up long time ago. We would have even gone the direction of students. Again, social distancing from around June this year, we forgot about this social distancing. It was just there for March and April. And I mean, I've been going around and we interact with people. We did a test, like as church ministers. We thought now that we are reopening our churches, let's just make sure we are all okay. So we have submitted ourselves to test. And we are almost sure there has to be one of us who was thinking. But we are praying and trusting God. Thank God that none of us had this. We've been interacting with people. I mean, guys, I was talking to a certain leader from a place called a slum area near where I stay. I'll not mention the name of the slum area. And he was telling me how, you walk down there, then you realize everybody's looking at you, and you realize you're the only one with a mask, in that slum area. And I asked him, you're a leader there, you're always involved, because you have a program where they take care of people if they pass on in that area. He said, how many people have been dying there? He said, the deaths have been the kind of deaths that we've been dealing with before. I mean, this is a person on the ground. But in these areas, they don't have those social distancing things. They don't have those things for masks. It's only for the police, and that's outside that slum area. I mean, let's reopen this thing, man. Let's reopen schools, churches, thingy. And in fact, I would suggest, let's just fully reopen and then see what will happen. If actually people begin to drop down dead on the streets, then okay, we go back to whatever. Yeah, I mean, let's just reopen. Those are my thoughts.
Richie, nobody's gonna drop down dead. I mean,
none of us.
They won't.
We are all going to drop down dead point.
At one time, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think, to look at the proximity of people in places like Mathare, Kibera, Pipeline, all over the place. And I'm telling you, we've been into this. I was in a slum Sunday, and I looked weird wearing a mask. In fact, I removed it, I said, by faith. Because wearing a mask, they're the only one are looking weird. And I can assure you there's nothing like social distancing, and life moves on. You know what? Maybe we are not celebrating a blessing that God has given us. And I really feel it for the Brazil that is about the US, where Lily Walegwa is asking us to pray for. I really feel it for them. But it's good to look around and see what God has done and really see that, celebrate that, and take advantage and move on, as opposed to just playing all this caution game. And we know ain't taking us nowhere from where it stands. Well, guys, let me read this last one as we wrap it up for the night. Ranik Musembi says we are getting to a comfortable space. At least right now, COVID is not the monster it was when we first had a diagnosis. Doctors are slowly understanding the behavior of the virus, and they can manage a case without the stigma previously attached. Schools will open in phases, and that's part of management of masked stigma. Well, guys, I've got to wrap it up at this point. Thank you so very, very much for these panelists. I want to appreciate again for the first time to host Frederick Njiri. Thank you so much, Fred. Your contribution really, really priceless right there. Thank you, Kitao. I like it when you go on a collision course with Joy, man. It brings fire. But it just brings you the excitement that this coffee bar is all about. And I really do hope those of you that have been watching us, is a lot that you've learned and you've been challenged in many ways. We're talking about money, what we receive in a church, or we shouldn't, sort of thing. And of course, the issue about reopening of schools, and of course, reopening the country to the economy and everything else. And I want to appreciate all of you. Thank you again, President. We are praying for you for the Kiambu seat because you said you're looking for it. Joy has not yet declared her stand so that we can begin to pray. But we are trusting God that you guys will be on the ballot paper somewhere, and you will invite us to come on, and we will actually campaign from you from here in the name of the Lord. Why not? I am tired of praying and then just waiting to see some crook get on the ballot and I go choose the better devil. Now that narrative changes. I'm choosing people that I know and have their testimony. Well, before I go, I want to bring to your attention, guys, that coming up on the 14th, 15th, and 16th next week, we are the Inuka Africa Conference where we're hosting Bishop J.B. Masinde, we're hosting Wisdom Kandla, we're hosting one Anthony Ashaye, we are hosting James Magara, and we are talking about the mountain of religion, the mountain of business and economy, and the mountain of governance and leadership. And I want to invite all of you to come. It's going to be both in Dcdonholm physically, but we'll also be online because a good number of speakers will be online. So I want to welcome you to show up, and it's going to be wonderful to host you. Yeah, there's a little one waving us there. Go to school, girl. Others, guys, thank you so much. God bless you. I want to say the Lord bless you. I want to say goodbye, and we will see you later.
Amen. God bless.
All right.
God bless you.
God bless you. God bless you. Pastor, guys.